In 1934, in the far southern end of New Jersey near Bridgeton, hundreds of black and immigrant workers fought police, vigilantes, and even the Ku Klux Klan in their attempt to stop Seabrook Farms from cutting their wages during the Great Depression. And some 30 miles north in Camden, black workers joined white workers in a strike that shut down Campbell Soup Company. These two related strikes reveal the important role African American workers played in agriculture and industries tied to agriculture, both as workers in the fields, factories, and canneries, and as activists in some of the most progressive unions of the time. C.F. Seabrook ran a massive agricultural operation in far South Jersey that included 6,000 acres of crops, processing factories, canneries, and the first frozen food plant in America. One of his core business philosophies was to find whatever groups of workers he could who would work for the lowest possible wages in the company town he created. Over the years, these included contract workers from the Caribbean, German prisoners of war, Japanese internees, and Estonian refugees. But in the early 1930s, he relied primarily on two groups: recent Sicilian immigrants from South Philadelphia and South Jersey, and African American workers, mostly migrants from the Upper South. The black workers occupied the lowest rung of employees, being the first fired when business slowed down. Many of these workers followed an annual trek from northern Florida through Georgia and up to the fields of New Jersey, following the crops as they ripened. When they reached Seabrook, they were housed in makeshift tents and crowded dormitories. For black and white workers who lived and worked there year-round, Seabrook crammed them into houses where multiple families lived in sections segregated by race and ethnicity. When the Great Depression devastated the country in the 1930s, throwing millions out of work, many companies took advantage of the desperation of working-class Americans by cutting wages to barely minimal survival levels. In April 1934, black and Italian workers joined together and went on strike at a time when the company desperately needed them to plant the New Year's crops. Taken by surprise and with no options, the company agreed to a sizable wage increase. But by June, when the need for labor dropped, Seabrook went back on its agreement and cut the wages to subsistence levels again. By this time, the workers had organized the first union ever at Seabrook, the Agricultural and Cannery Workers Industrial Union, and elected a black worker, Jerry Brown, as their president. C.F. Seabrook tried to talk Brown into abandoning the union, promising him that he would fire the Italian workers and just keep black workers, but Brown refused. Seabrook fired him, and the workers voted to go on strike again. But this time, Seabrook was prepared and met the strikers with company guards, local police, and vigilantes from the area, including the Ku Klux Klan. Workers fought back, pulling beets off of trucks destined for the processing plant. Vivian Dahl, one of the striking workers, later wrote this about the encounter between the strikers and the police and vigilantes, as we can see in this rare footage. "Them women sure are scrappers," says a state trooper, and how. A beet truck was coming down the road, scab beets. As the truck drew up to weigh in, the women saw red. It was three black women who started pulling the beets off the truck. It didn't take long for one of those rich farmer vigilante friends of Seabrook's to swing his pickaxe handle, smash down on the eye and forehead of Ella Roberts, young black girl who never missed a day on the picket line and volunteer relief duty. That started things. For an hour and a half, the women, black and white, joined by their husbands and children, put up such a battle as the cops and deputies and whatnots never saw. Battling against scabs, trucks, blackjacks, pickaxe handles, water from the fire engine, and tear gas, the valiant strikers wore out the cops and deputies, who got as much tear gas back as they threw. That's from Vivian Dahl, one of the Seabrook strikers. Eventually, a federal mediator brokered an agreement that restored workers' pay, but did not recognize the union. 7 years later, Seabrook finally agreed to recognize another, more conservative union. Seabrook was not the only place where black workers in South Jersey's agricultural industries fought for their rights as workers, along with workers from other groups. The other internationally important agricultural processing company in South Jersey was Campbell Soup Company, operator of the world's largest soup cannery in Camden. While Campbell employed black male workers as basic laborers and janitors, they refused to hire black women at all, instead hiring Italian and other immigrant women for processing jobs. And in 1934, they too lowered pay for their workers, and the workers also walked out in a spontaneous strike. Though that strike was defeated due to weak federal labor laws and inexperience, the workers regrouped and built an organizing campaign that led to an overwhelming union victory in 1940. They were now Local 80 of the United Cannery Workers, later known as the Food and Tobacco Workers, a militant union dedicated to working class unity that fought company efforts to divide workers by race, ethnicity, or gender. Their first demand was for Campbell to drop its ban on hiring black women and to open all jobs to all workers regardless of race. The company tried to use that issue to appeal to its white workers to reject their union, but union organizers explained that unity was central to any workers' hopes for improvement, and the company finally backed down. Black workers quickly became some of the most active and militant union leaders. At the end of World War II, just a few years after they joined the workforce, black workers were in the lead in initiating a wildcat strike to deal with low pay and grievances that had been accumulating during the war. Seen here in August 1945, calling out to their fellow workers in the plant to join them. All 5,000 workers did walk out and they won significant gains. By 1952, the union's president, financial secretary, and chief steward were all African American, and 11 of the 26 officers were women. Local 80 had become one of the most important locals and one of the most progressive unions in American history, the United Cannery Workers, also known as the Food and Tobacco Workers. This union also took the lead in organizing tobacco workers in Winston-Salem, North Carolina, and according to historians, gave birth to the long civil rights movement, also organizing Mexican workers and others at the bottom of the economic hierarchy. New Jersey can be proud of the role black workers played in organizing across the agricultural sector of American industry, especially at Seabrook and Campbell Soup. See these resources for more on this topic.